Well, it's safe to say the 2018 season didn't quite go as planned for Minnesota. They were only one win away from a Super Bowl berth in 2017 and still adding the biggest quarterback on the market, and honestly the biggest quarterback free agent that there's been in quite some time, probably since Peyton Manning. Things were seeming to be looking on the up and up. However, it didn't really quite go as planned, and they even missed the playoffs. So Cousins got a lot of the blame, and a little bit of it deserved. However, I don't think anywhere near as much of it was deserved as the amount of blame that he actually got. But I like Kirk Cousins. I think he's a very good player. I mean, you could make the argument he's not worth his contract. He might not be on an Aaron Rodgers level. However, he's still very good. I still think he's a top 13 quarterback in my book, which is why on my top 40 quarterback rankings, I'm having him right here on number 13. But anyways, let's just jump into it with this play. It's going to be a cover one robber, and they have a receiver running a slant route right over there in the middle of the screen, and this is actually interesting, because if this was a cover one hole, for example, where the linebacker was in charge of covering that middle of the screen, this play wouldn't be able to work out too well. The linebacker would be right in the way of that potential slant route and could easily try to make a play. However, since it's a robber situation, this now means that San Francisco 49ers actually have to do a lot of running to try to get into that middle of the screen before he can get in the way. So this slant route actually will be open, at least for a short period of time. But what I like about this from Kirk Cousins is how quickly he realizes what's going on, notices that this play could work, and is going to make this throw very quickly. I mean, as you see right now, his receiver hasn't even turned his head, but if you look at Kirk Cousins, he's already getting ready to throw this ball. The second his receiver looks his way, he makes a throw there, and that's key because they had to make that throw quickly since there was a safety that was going to be coming in. The play had to be done quick, but Kirk Cousins realized that. He also realized what play it was and saw it was a robber and not a cover one hole, and was able to make that throw very quickly. It's just good decision making all around. Kirk Cousins realized what was going on very quickly, read the play, and made the correct decision. And that's really what the most part of being a quarterback is. It's just realizing what's going on and making the correct decision. I mean, we all know that there's been more athletic players than Tom Brady. However, what makes Tom Brady so great? Just his ability to read plays and know what's going on. And also, he has great arm talent himself, but you know what I mean. And speaking of good athletes, that's actually one thing that I feel like is underrated about Kirk Cousins. This guy is an athlete. I mean, I know when you put him next to these giant offensive linemen, he kind of looks like he's a golfer who just happened to wander onto a football field, but this guy can play. Like on this play, for example, it's going to be play action, and they have a receiver running an out route right there, so this is a decent way to beat play action. It's something you'll see teams do often, and it's something that the Minnesota Vikings are going to do right here. And so as you see, Kirk Cousins' receiver, it's about to get open. It's taking a little bit longer for him to get open, but he will get open eventually, hopefully. But of course, that has a downside, and the downside is it's going to take longer for that play to develop, and Kirk Cousins might not have that amount of time. And in fact, he definitely isn't going to have that amount of time, because there's a 49er right there who's crashing right towards Kirk Cousins and could easily make a play. So for Cousins, he's going to run outside the pocket and still be able to make a good enough throw on the run that they're able to pick up a decent gain. That's an athletic play. It is not easy to make those types of throws on the run. I mean, granted, no one's going to confuse Kirk Cousins for Aaron Rodgers, but at least he can make those types of plays. He's not like one of those old school quarterbacks that would never even use his feet. He is a guy who can move. I wouldn't put my game on the line with just his ability to move, but it is something that is at least a little bit promising. Of course, being able to throw on a run isn't the number one attribute you will look at in evaluating a quarterback. Just being able to throw, period, is the number one attribute. So like on this play, the Vikings have a receiver right over there, and it's going to be one-on-one coverage, and since that defensive back is playing press coverage and the receiver is running a go route, this is the route that Kirk Cousins likes, and this is the route that Kirk Cousins might try to throw to. And if you look after this ball is snapped, well, there's not really too much you can tell of what's going on right here. Now, the one bright side, of course, that the defensive back does have his head turned the other way, so that's definitely a good situation and something Kirk Cousins could like to try. So maybe if this is a first down and 10, well then this is kind of a no-brainer. You take a shot towards the end zone, it'll either be a touchdown or it'll just be an incomplete pass, and you can move on to second down. However, this is third down and 3, so Kirk Cousins is going to be taking a risk here if he does try to make this throw. But he trusts his abilities and trusts his receiver. He's going to make a great throw, Diggs makes a good catch, and it results in a touchdown. It's a bold play, but you know what? A bold play is a no-brainer if it works, and it worked right there for Kirk Cousins. That's the thing about Kirk Cousins. He will have some games and he will make some throws that'll make you say, okay, this guy isn't just a slightly above average starting level quarterback, this guy is an elite level quarterback. I'm not saying he does that consistently, but he will show some flashes, and I mean, worth mentioning, this is a guy who has thrown for 4,917 yards in his career, and not over his entire career. I mean, in one season he did that. Not to mention last year, his numbers were actually very good. I mean, 4,298 yards, 30 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, and a 70.1 completion percentage. His completion percentage and touchdowns were career highs. His passing yards was second highest he's had in his career. So to say that the Vikings didn't get what they're paying for is absolutely ridiculous. They got better than what they're paying for. Now maybe you still shouldn't pay a quarterback that kind of money. That's a debate for another day. But the reality is, Kirk Cousins can play. And I guarantee you, if the Vikings went 13-3 and went to another NFC Championship game, game, nobody would be saying Kirk Cousins isn't worth the money. It just didn't work out that way. The reality is, getting to an NFC Championship game is really hard to do. I mean, it took them a miracle last time to do it. And with all due respect to Case Keenum, I bet you Vikings fans really wish they had Kirk Cousins there in that NFC Championship game. Although, with how well Philly played that game, I doubt that would have made much of a difference. This play is another really good example, I feel like, of a smart play by Cousins, where the way it's going to work is you're going to see that there's one Detroit Lions safety who's deep right now, only one safety deep. So if this is zone coverage, that would make you think, okay, it's probably cover 3 zone. However, this route concept for Minnesota is not designed to be cover 3, this is designed to be a cover 2 zone. Because as you see the routes that they're running, there is going to be one receiver who's running deep towards the middle of the field, and one receiver who's running deep towards the top half of the field. So if this was a cover 2, there'd only be one Lion on the top half of the field, he could only cover one of those 2 Vikings, the other one would be left wide open. However, if it's cover 3, it would not work out at all. So basically, what Kirk Cousins has to figure out here is it going to be cover 2 or cover 3? If it's cover 3, he should just hit a dump off. If it's cover 2, he should take a shot deep. That's what Kirk Cousins should do here. And so once this play develops, what you'll see here is there's basically one guy you're going to take a look at, and it's going to be that Detroit Lion right over there. Because he's breaking over to the bottom half of the screen, now Kirk Cousins knows, okay, this is cover 2. And also because the other Lion is now further down to the bottom half of the hash marks, this gives the Vikings a pretty good idea, okay, this is cover 2, got it. And that's key because not only is it cover 2, but also that Detroit Lion is breaking down to the bottom half of the screen, meaning that Adam Thielen right over there is going to get open. And so for Kirk Cousins, he's just going to take a shot deep because he knows he can make it. Adam Thielen makes a good catch, but it was a great throw from Cousins and a great read from Cousins, and that's what led to them getting the ball inside the 10-yard line. One other thing I like about Kirk Cousins is his quick release and honestly just his quick throwing ability. Again, maybe it's just because of his more calm demeanor and the fact that he is kind of a skinny guy, but people don't give him enough credit for having a big arm. He can make those big throws as I've just shown you, but it's not just deep throws that having a big arm can come in handy with. It can actually be some of these shorter range throws as well. Like on this play, it's going to be man coverage, and Diggs is going to be running a simple out route right over there, try to get into the end zone, try to get open. Relatively simple. And after this ball is snapped, well, he's going to get himself pretty decently open. But you know, this is always kind of a conundrum for a quarterback, because if you make this throw too early, well then you are actually making this throw when the window is going to be at its biggest. However, if the defensive back breaks in, that could result in an interception. However, if you wait too long, the window isn't going to be as big because the defensive back realizes what the route is and will easily be able to break in and try to knock the ball away. So it definitely is a conundrum for quarterbacks. However, Cousins kind of has an advantage that allows him to throw the ball while the window is still pretty big, but also he can have an idea if his receiver will be open or not. And that advantage is a quick release and being able to throw the ball very quickly. Because as you see, look at how quickly he gets the ball to Diggs. I mean, just so seamlessly. That took basically no time at all, and that's so key for Cousins to get the ball to Diggs very quickly so that way it can be a touchdown. If he couldn't throw the ball as fast or had a longer release, then maybe a defensive back does come in and break the ball up. But because he was able to do both those things, that's what led to a touchdown. I also like Kirk Cousins' awareness. I feel like he's a very aware player, and this play will be an example of that. It's going to be man coverage as it's a cover 2 man, and those are the routes that the Minnesota Vikings will be running. And so, you know, against a cover 2 man, well, what are the routes you might want to look at? Well, maybe the number 2 receiver who's going to be crashing in towards the middle of the screen. That could be a good route to look to throw to. Nothing deep will probably be open, but maybe that route's to look to throw to, or the halfback running into the flat, another route you could look to throw to. However, there's one more route that I don't have on the screen right now, and that's because it's going to be a tight end who at first is just going to be blocking. He's going to start off blocking, but then run out to the flat on the top half of the screen. That's the way his route is going to go. Essentially, he'll disrupt the edge rusher, which will help the right tackle get in as good a positioning as possible, and then he'll still run out and be able to run a route. However, this play is going to unintentionally actually have some pretty significant consequences, and good consequences, not bad ones. Because for one thing, if you look in the middle of the screen, okay, the receiver who was running in the middle of the screen isn't open. We knew there was a chance he could get open, but he isn't really that open. However, there's a reason he really isn't open, and that's because there's another Detroit Lion in that area. You see, he's in charge of covering Minnesota's tight end. However, since he saw the tight end blocking, he realized, okay, I should drop back into coverage, give us an extra man in coverage. However, the tight end wasn't full on blocking, he was just starting off the play blocking, and so now he's wide open. But again, being open doesn't mean anything. You don't get points for being open. Kirk Cousins has to see you. But Kirk Cousins does quickly look around, realize his tight end is open, make the throw there, and they're able to pick up a decent gain. Nothing crazy, nothing that'll make you go, okay, this guy should be in the Hall of Fame. No, obviously not. But that's a little thing that he did very well. I mean, that play wasn't designed to go to his tight end, but he realized, okay, the guy I want to throw it to isn't open. Let's look around and see if anyone else is open. Oh, hey, my tight end's wide open. I'll hit him instead. And in fact, he probably saw that there was an extra Detroit Lion in coverage and said, okay, someone has to be wide open. And that's how he was able to find his tight end. There are some negatives to Kirk Cousins as well. He is far from a perfect player, and this play will be an example of a negative. It's going to be a cover 3 zone, and those are the routes that the Vikings receivers will be running. And, you know, there is a route that is going to get kind of into a gap in coverage right there, so maybe maybe that's where Kirk Cousins should look to throw to. And after the ball is snapped, not only is that receiver kind of open, but there's also another couple of receivers who are kind of open as well, just underneath those gaps in coverage. So for Cousins, he should just make a throw in any one of these directions. He has several options to choose from. He can just take a few yards by hitting a receiver, or he can try to take some more yards and make more of a risky throw over the middle. However, there's another option. He kind of sees that the sea has kind of been parted right in front of him. He could just try to run and pick up some yards that way, and so that's what he's going to do. However, I don't really recommend that, and here's why. Because he's going to end up still getting clobbered and even fumbles the football. There was really no reason to do that because there were receivers open. That is one thing that you could look at Kirk Cousins statistics-wise and say, okay, well that's not great, and that's the fact that he did fumble the ball 9 times. Although granted, when talking about a quarterback, fumbles always are just a misleading stat, and a large part of that is because offensive line play has a huge impact in whether you fumble the football or not. Like on this play, for example, it's actually a good play designed by Buffalo, but still, what's going to happen is there's going to be first 6 men on the line. So one key thing here is that the left guard does have to be potentially aware of that Buffalo Bills player, and he would have to block him if he does end up rushing the passer. However, if he drops back into coverage, then he should just move over to double team the guy in the nose. That's basically the way this is going to work from the left guard's perspective. And so that means if the other 2 Buffalo Bills players do rush the passer, this now means that the left tackle and halfback are each going to be in charge of blocking one guy. However, it's not going to be that simple for Buffalo. Instead, what's going to happen is that player right there is basically just going to run straight up to the top half of the screen, and then number 58 over there is going to run kind of closer to the left side of the screen. And the reason for that is because watch what happens. This left tackle is actually going to rush over to try to block 55 there. Which, I mean, that's just a complete mistake. That should just not happen. And the reason I say that is because now, I mean, he should realize, oh, there's 2 Bills players. I need to block just whichever one is closer to my right, which would be the left side of the screen. Instead, he's still blocking the guy who he was lined up with, but this now means that the Minnesota Vikings halfback is going to have to run over to the bottom half of the screen, try to block 58, who's running straight towards Cousins. So this is just a terrible situation. But maybe even worse than all of that is the left tackle is still going to actually lose his assignment before the halfback did. I mean, just not a good play at all. And for that was actually Riley Reiff, who is actually probably one of their better offensive linemen. He's far from a garbage player. I'm not trying to pick on him necessarily, but I'm just trying to show that as a whole, the offensive line for Minnesota definitely did not do their part and probably was the biggest weakness of their team last year. They made some very bad plays, and bad plays turned into turnovers. So for Kirk Cousins, he had kind of a lot to deal with. Yes, they had some receivers, and yes, they did have a solid running game, but they didn't have the best offensive coordinator last year. Not to mention, the offensive line definitely could have played better. So there was kind of some goods and some bads, but even with that, he still put up some pretty solid numbers. And honestly, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of teams in the league that would be ecstatic about a quarterback that could throw 30 touchdowns to 10 interceptions and lead their team to an 8-7-1 record next year. It just so happens that because the expectations were Super Bowl, the fact that they ended up going kind of mediocre definitely made him look not great. But even with all that, Kirk Cousins is easily still just as good a player as he was in Washington, if not better. I know people point to his 4-25 record against winning teams and say, well, there you go, he's not a great player. And I have to be honest, that is part of the reason why I don't have him too much higher on this list. I mean, not because of the bad quarterback record or anything. We all know it's stupid to judge a quarterback based on QB wins. Not to mention, of course, you're going to have a worse record against winning teams. Every team in the league does that. But Cousins is still a good player. He still has value. Is he overpaid? Well, I don't know. I'm not a cap expert. But is he a good player? Absolutely.